Hello everyone, I'm Pooja and I welcome you all to another episode of EIP Focus Series, PEEPanEIP. Today we are going to talk about EIP-173, Contract Ownership Standard. It's basically an ERC and is in the last call state. Its review period has ended recently and there is an open pull request. If you go to EIP GitHub repo, you can find it there. It's 2832. Link will be provided in the description below. To provide an overview of the protocol and let us know the real world implementation, we have Mudge today. Some of you may know him by the name of Mudge, his GitHub handle. So without further ado, please take it away, Nick. Let us know a little bit about yourself and then we will dive into the protocol.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Nick and I'm a smart contract developer. I've done some of the standards, contract standards, and so yeah, I'm also working on another standard called the Diamond Standard, and so that's me. Yeah. So we want to talk about 173.
Right.
Okay, good. So I can just talk a little bit about the history about it, about how it came to be. There's Open Zeppelin, and they created these libraries of smart contracts that people can use. And early on, they created a smart contract called Ownable, and that contract had this pattern to own or control a contract, and it looked like it was being used a lot, and it made sense to make that into a standard so that it was defined and people could expect it, and people creating user interfaces or other things that dealt with contracts could use it and rely on it. And so that was actually made quite a while ago. I found a post on the internet by Dan Finlay, who originally proposed the idea that there be a standard for owning contracts, and he wrote about it. And then later in 2018, I thought it was a good idea, so I took what he wrote and actually made an EIP and added some stuff to the EIP to give it more information, and that's how it came to be.
That's pretty interesting. Like I see the history says that it took almost about 4 years. So one more thing I missed to introduce William. He is also from Catalyst team. And we would like to know more about this protocol, since we see that it took about 4 years to get across here. How do you think, like, why did it take so long?
All right, so you're asking me why it took so long?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's mostly took so long because the writers of the standard, which is really me, myself, and Dan, we just didn't keep working on it or pushing on it or doing anything about it for a long time. It doesn't take years for an EIP to move from draft to final, unless the authors of it have dropped it or haven't done anything about it a long time. And so that's the case for us. We just got involved with other things, and and then but not that long ago, I thought it would it made sense to, well, let's just push it through to final, because this pattern is being used in many places. Anywhere Open Zeppelin contracts are being used, where Ownable is being used, it's being used. So why not make it final? And there's a lot of EIPs that are in draft status, and so I think it's good for the EIPs in general to have like completed EIPs that are in final status, and I think that's good for the Ethereum community to have that. So I thought, well, I had a little bit of time, so I thought I'd push it through, and so that's what's happened recently.
That's really commendable. Actually, one of the ideas behind starting this series is also that, like, we see hundreds of EIPs are pending in draft status. We would want them either to be final, get into the state of final, or if they are no more of use, we can actually mention it as supersede or close the pull request. So that's really nice of you. to actually come back and start pushing it through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Is there some need that you saw now that made you really come back and say, like, we really need to get an ownable unit? Wow, I tripped over myself there. An ownable interface standard out there, or is it always just sort of been the same need and you finally got time back around to it now?
Yeah, I think it's been the same need as always, and you know, there wasn't really anything new. I just thought, you know, it would be good to finalize it, you know, or, you know, I don't think it makes, for this standard, it's used so much, you know, I think Open Zeppelin's contracts are used a lot, and so it would make sense to remove it. So, so yeah, I think that for, at least from what I've seen on Ethereum, that as far as standards go, like sometimes people will use patterns and contracts and there might not be like an official standard written for it, but it's just a pattern that gets adopted. And so it's like a standard, whether or not it's written or in final stat, you know, these real standards are, they're standard because people are doing it. But I think it's a good thing to have official standards so people can be certain about the right ways to do things, and also to give them, make them more confident that things aren't going to change on them, that, like, you know, how to do something isn't going to be different later and trip them up in some way.
I'm actually really glad that you brought it up that way. I think you half answered the next question I was going to ask, but I might ask it anyway, maybe just to get the other half, which is that there is a pattern that we see very often in smart contract development of just using a modifier for only owner or something of that sort. Is there do you see an advantage of using the interface as opposed to using that sort of common development pattern?
Oh, well, I think that modifier, you know, does use this interface. You know, I think they can go together. That owner modifier and EIP-173.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I suppose. I mean, do you intend for people to have to? Taking a look at the EIP, it could be that I misunderstood myself. I was under the impression that what you're looking for with the interface is to come up with an ownable interface and then have contracts inherit that they'll make themselves. Like, and I guess the same way that we probably use an Open Zeppelin contract and then say, like, you know, my contract is ownable. Do you anticipate people using it more with like an interface and inheritance, or actually just coding it into their contracts?
Oh, I think both ways. I see people inheriting and just writing it, and I've seen both ways. So, yeah. It's also, you know, even adding a modifier, like an optional modifier, or even mentioning that in the standard that it's common for people to use a modifier. Okay, maybe there's something to add there.
Okay, I understand. That actually helps me understand it a bit better than I had before. I thought that you were specifically going for interface, like the sort of inheritable interface kind of pattern. That's interesting. I'm thinking maybe, depending on what you think, Pooja, maybe we should actually zoom out for a second and even talk about why contracts need to be ownable.
Yeah, and along with that, if we can also get to know about the usage of ENS, like I can see in the history, like we were discussing about using ENS for this particular protocol. So if you could also let us know about something about that.
Oh yeah, sure. So in the comments and discussion for this standard, another developer, Nick, had suggested, well, you could use ENS for owning contracts, and so I looked at that and considered that, and other people did too, and you know, but I just felt like adding ENS, you know, some people might not be using that ENS, and you know, at the time the standard was being written, the ownable contract and this pattern was already being used. So it's more simple. So these various reasons decide not to use ENS. Yeah, but also I think for this standard EIP-173 is that it's so simple that you can build other kind of ownership patterns on top of it. So there's probably a way, you know, that you can implement EIP-173, but still use ENS for owning contracts to tie into it. You can add voting schemes for, you know, for having control of a contract on top of EIP-173. So I think there's a lot of things there's a lot of flexibility with how it is, how simple it is, but you can build on top of it to cause the control and ownership of it to be different in different ways.
Just to make sure that I'm understanding you clearly, when you talk about ENS integration, you mean just to be able to put in, like, you know, a foo.f instead of actually putting in the whole hexadecimal address, or are you talking about leveraging the system on a deeper level?
You know, I have to, I haven't tried integrating ENS. I mean, I think I looked at it a while ago, but I don't really remember very much about it. So I don't have a really good answer for that right now. I just feel pretty confident that there could be some integration with ENS with it. And I know that's very vague, but I'd have to look.
No, I understand.
Familiarize myself.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot also. Definitely what you're saying is also true, that if you just have the basic standard, the basic pattern for how to make something ownable, if somebody does want to make an ENS integration on top of that, then for sure that could be sort of another layer on top of what you've already built. I definitely do agree with you that there's no need to add in complexity when what you're striving for is just the most simple pattern for people to be able to know and to follow. And I saw also that you wrote one of the other considerations was maybe making contracts ownable by way of NFT.
Oh yeah.
It's there. It's in the EIP also. So I mean, it's definitely an interesting model for how you can represent, like, sort of make a tokenized representation of owning a contract. But again, I mean, it would seem to me from the EIP that what you're striving for, and definitely from what you're talking about now, is the most simple way to represent ownership of a contract. And at that point, trying to get fancier with it, as interesting as implementations may be, I do think take away from what you're trying to do with the EIP.
So talking about implementation, I was wondering, like, how did you first hear about the implementation? Like, is the story like first it was implemented in OpenZeppelin and then you thought of having this written as a standard protocol, or how did it go?
Yeah, I think that I was familiar with OpenZeppelin's Ownable, and then I saw Dan Finlay's post about, you know, making it into a standard, and he wrote a bit about that, and it just made sense to me to do that, and I wanted to be a standards writer, and it seemed like an easy one to do and low-hanging fruit, something that would be easy to you do and that would be valuable. So that's why I went into it. Yeah.
That's always helpful. Like when people come up with having a standard of that, it's useful stuff for people following it, right? We can come up with something on top of that if we already know what is there in the base, right? So yeah, that's really nice of you.
Yeah.
So while writing this standard, I know that you have also been coming up with another protocol that we may be having a separate episode on that, because I know that that has a lot to for a community to take on. So I was just trying to understand what would be your experience as an protocol writer or as an ERC, making it in a complete standardized format. How do you feel like? What are the challenges, if there are any, you faced?
Yeah. So I found that it to be like very interesting work to write, EIP, a standard. I found that people were they were appreciative to have someone basically develop ways to achieve things that people could use, and so people like it. The challenges are, I mean, one of the challenges I had was like was sometimes, like, depending on the standard, sometimes they can take a lot of time. Like another standard I did was EIP-998, which is this composable non-fungible token standard, and it kind of has a lot to it, and it can take like for that one, it take a long time to develop it, to get it right, to get a reference implementation, to test it, to get feedback from people, and and then getting some adoption. So I think a challenge would be it taking time, and also I'm a developer, but I need to work and make money, and so my experience that developing standards was not, you might not get paid, and I haven't been paid. So if I was paid, then I feel better about spending a lot of time on it, because then I could pay my bills while I was doing it. So it's so funny, technically it wasn't, and it's, the EIP editors, the people that, allow you to submit an EIP, they watch what you do, make sure you do it right, but they're very, they accept, things that are reasonable, they accept. So it's not hard to, if you have an idea, something that could help, that could be valuable, and you get some people interested, it's not very hard to do this stuff. But for me, the challenge was just the time, and that I didn't have, and that and not having money, backing to work on it. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's my personal thought that if it is coming from a developer who has actually implemented or know more in detail, if they are writing these protocols, they can do more justice than people actually who are seeing it from far distance. So it makes sense, but I can certainly understand your point of, investing a lot of time in writing these standards. I would like to particularly know about, I was reading through that. I find that everything is going good. I'm no expert in EIP creating or writing, but I feel like overall it looks good. But still, we are looking for some more reviews and, to get it into the next stage. So if you have any, what would be your suggestion to kind of improve and make these process easier for developers who wants to actually write protocols? I'm asking these questions from different perspective, because we are also a part of a improvement protocol group, so EIP group. So if we can get real-time feedback from devs like you, would be really helpful in improving the process for people who would be interested in doing in future.
All right, cool. I think part of it is getting people to read a new standard and to give useful feedback. And so I think what you're doing, where you're generating interest and getting people to participate, makes it easier for people to write EIPs or get them through to a completed end. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I think what you're doing helps with that. Yeah, just to say that.
If I could take it maybe a step back, remembering how much time you've put in on 173, being that the IP numbers have already exceeded an order of magnitude larger than that, might be difficult. But if you have a general idea in general with the kind of ERC styled EIPs, about how much time do you think it takes to put them together? With everything that you're saying, needing the implementations and all of that, what kind of an expenditure of time do you think we're talking about?
Yeah, sure. So it does depend on what standard, because some of them are bigger or more complicated than others. Like 173 is not very complicated, and it's already implemented and tested. So 173 is not very, so it doesn't. So I didn't spend very much time on 173. I don't know how much, but some amount of hours on it. But others the composable non-fungible token standard spent weeks of figuring things out and testing and implementing and answering people's questions. The diamond standard is another one that I've spent weeks of work on. I mean, I don't have a very good idea of estimate on the time, because I hadn't paid attention to it, but I just know it could be weeks or months, depending, or on bigger standards, and for smaller ones it could be hours. I mean, there's ERC-20. It's more complicated than 173, but it's not that complicated. But it was new, so that's probably a medium one. I mean, at the time it was developed, it was new. I don't know. I just thought of that one. But that's not very complicated either. But yeah. So I think it depends on the standard. ERC, I watched the development of ERC 721, a non-fungible token standard, which is has a decent amount of complexity, and that one was a pretty good group effort. Like there was a lot of feedback on that one when it was being developed, and that one took some you know, I don't know, some weeks and maybe a couple months of a lot of continuous attention.
And a group effort, it sounds like.
Yeah, there was so much interest in that one particularly, and there's a lot of feedback, hundreds or thousands of comments or something like that.
When you talk about feedback, that's primarily through the EIP repo on GitHub, or does that also come in through other forums? Like how do the authors tend to get feedback on what they're writing?
Yeah, a lot of times, as you'll notice that in an EIP there'll be a link for discussion, and that's often like an issue on the repository or to a forum. And so for ERC
721.
Yeah, 721. There's an issue for discussion, and there's just so many comments, like I don't know, maybe 1,000 comments or something, or maybe less than that, but hundreds. And so, and I'm sure there's people talking about it on in other places. But for me, like ERC 998, which is the composable non-fungible token one, I got feedback from an issue on the repository, the EIP repository, but also there was on Discord, there was a channel or a server, so got feedback there. Yeah, sometimes people will email you if you're an author and get some feedback that way. Yeah.
Just to add here, like this particular EIP is like pretty old, 2 years back, but recently what we have started is like encouraging people to create post at forum of Fellowship of Ethereum Magician and move the discussion over there. It's actually helpful for developers to have it in central place, and they can give their feedback asynchronously, and that is really helpful instead of making it in GitHub repository and keeping it in form of issue. Although getting the comments on pull request is directly talking to the author, so that has been proven to be helpful as well.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. Yeah.
To me, I mean, this looks very cool. I mean, I know that you have already crossed the date of review, and we have seen review feedbacks. If I remember correctly, most of the suggestions has been implemented, and I'm not sure, like maybe a couple of few would be left on there. So did you hear back from anybody to, how to proceed further, or you're just waiting on like somebody should come up and help you out with pushing it? I'm just trying to understand how is the experience here?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, one of the EIP authors, not authors, but editors, had some concerns and some thoughts on the latest revision of 173. Mostly kind of like technical things, like more like how it's edited, or or like what headings it's using. So, and I dropped it a little bit. I just need to get back to it and fix a few things and then get it done. So yeah.
Yeah, I hope it moves forward really soon. With that, I think I'm done with the questions. William, do you think you have more on your side?
I can say that if one of these stalls, like an EIP stalls, is probably the author of the EIP's sort of fault. They're not following it through. So like right now, 173 is a bit stuck because I kind of got pulled off onto working on other things. So I want to get it done. So I'll get back on it. It probably doesn't take that much more to push it through, but yeah.
Yeah, we have seen this thing, like generally what happens in EIP is started, and after some time author either lose interest or they have some other thing to do. So in that case, we recommend somebody who is like interested to move in that protocol forward, come up as champion for that EIP, and with the help of that champion, we are trying to transition it through different states. And the current effort is towards, pushing every EIP to the right place. If it has to be finalized, let it be there. And if it has to be like superseded or closed, just to clean up the repository to be, more usable.
That's great. I think that's great.
Right. So with that, I think we at the end of this session today. As I mentioned earlier, though I'm not the expert, but I really hope that this thing should move ahead. After the release of this video, I hope that it should get to the state of final as soon as possible. For those who are new and are planning to create a proposal for Ethereum chain, we highly recommend reading EIP-1 and watching one of our previous episodes, like writing an ebook that we recorded with Matt, Light Client. And with that, I would like to thank you, Nick, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Nick, I hope to see you again discussing about the new protocol, the EIP-2535, the Diamond Standard. I find it very interesting. I hope that we should meet again very soon.
That's great. I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.